Okay, so we have a little piece of Dobbs Ferry with some buildings in it, and we've put some solar panels on the roof of Draper Lane where we'd like them to go. We've got some solar panels on the Greenberg Nature Center where they actually already exist. We have some solar and windmills in the by the ball field at Dobbs Ferry High School where they actually already exist, and we have a proposed helical vertical axis turbine on the rotunda at Mercy College where we'd propose it. So and we have a topographical map from a digital elevation map that uses the contours of the land as it goes down to the Hudson River and has the buildings situated properly. So we want to be able to walk that landscape. It's one thing to be able to fly through it as we showed in Blender, and that's great. We pick a camera view and then we can set keyframes and fly around. But what if we could walk around? That's the exciting thing, and be able to go up on the roof and look at things. And that's where Unity comes in. You could do it in Blender, but Blender's not ideal as a game creation engine. It does have a game logic window that you can work with, and you can set things up and do some game testing. But I prefer to work not in the game logic of Blender, but to bring it into Unity. So let me show you how we do that. Once you have your scene with all the objects in it, you want to bring that into Blender. Now, we had a file open where we had other things like all these buildings on another layer, and that will gum things up. So if you've done that, as in the last tutorial, and you've created layers besides the first layer where you have your primary scene, then you want to erase any of the other layers. So click on them, hit A to select all, and X to delete, and delete anything that's in any other layer other than your primary layer, because you don't need that going. And the other thing is you don't need for this the camera, and you don't need the light, because you're going to get those from Unity itself. Okay, so having eliminated those things, you save it, and I do a save as, and I make this Dobbs Ferry New York for Unity as a blend. So I keep my other blend, but this one is specific for bringing into Unity. And then we're done with Blender for now. And the nice thing is that by doing what we're about to do, which is bringing a blend file into Unity, if we need to change stuff, add more buildings, we can come back to this original blend file and drop them in here, and then they will reappear in in Unity. Let me show you how. So I close that to save some memory, and now I have Unity open. And it's rather simple, actually, which is really nice with Unity. You go to the folder that has your Blender file in it, and there's Dobbs Ferry New York for Unity Blender file, and you simply drag it into your assets. So we have scenes, Rosebud, template. We're going to make a new scene for Blender for this. So we'll go to new scene, and we will save this scene as, and I'm going to call this Dobbs Ferry, and save it in Unity VR test. Okay, because we're using, by the way, if you're using VR and you're using Unity, use 2018.22, not .3, the latest version. The plugins don't quite work for it, so it's for right now, as of January 29th of 2019, the date of the release of Kingdom Hearts 3, yay. At this point, using .3, 2018.3, is going to give you problems. So don't use that. And let's save this. And that scene is now Dobbs Ferry. And there it is. So we're in Dobbs Ferry. And then what you do is you just go up here and you drag this into the assets for those scenes. But assets scenes is there. materials th is the folder that I'm putting those materials in. Those are my scenes. So you can choose either folder. I'm going to put it in here and drag it in. And that will drag all the materials in with it. And then it's going to take some time, so you'll just have to wait for it to appear. So now we have it in here, and now what you can do is drag this. But first, before you drag it, open it up. Oh, if you click on it, it opens up Blender, so you can do work. If you need to do more work on it to change something and you click on it, it accesses the Blender file. When you click on this little window here, it shows you all the things that it pulled in. Most of these are the buildings that were in the file, and then there's Mercy College building. There it is there. There is the grease paint layer, which was Dobbs Ferry High School. There's the wind and solar panels. You can see here. There, bring that up. So all the assets are actually in there. Draper Lane model is in there. And materials are in there. There's that other wind turbine. Lots and lots and lots of stuff is in there. And a default texture, which is there. Unfortunately, it probably is going to turn out that we've lost our beautiful map, and we'll have to bring that in, because that doesn't seem to be there. It may have been, well, that's the DEM with the contours, but it doesn't have the texture map. Be that as it may, we'll deal with that in a second. That is one of the weaknesses of Blender now, but I'm going to bring this in, and there's our scene brought in. But again, no texture information on it yet. Okay, so what we want to do is figure out how we're going to bring that in. When we look at the game, we can, there's a tab for looking at what the camera sees in the game, how the game will see it, and then there's a scene tab. If you want to see the game constantly updated, drag that either above or to the side. Oops, say, the game like that, and then you can see the game and the scene tab at the same time. And then when you move the camera about, you can see what it'll look like in the game. Now, we have to address this idea of the fact that we cannot see the texture map, which tells us where everything is. And if you open up Dobbs Ferry here, you see that there are two layers. One is the digital elevation map of Dobbs Ferry that we had in Blender, and that one has the contours. It's the digital elevation. And the other one is this here, which has all the buildings on it. It's the, not the buildings, it's just the flat plane that had the image on it. And we're not going to work too much with that, but it is there. And then there's all the buildings, and each building was brought in individually. You can see all these different buildings in here: Nevis Mansion, Palisades Art Center, the solar panels. They're all in there as individual objects now. And what we want to do is we want to get onto the Dobbs Ferry digital elevation mesh, which has elevation information, has those mountains rather than that flat plane, which is the export satellite thing. We want to get that satellite image on there. And the way to do that is not all that hard. As I mentioned, it's not inside. It didn't come exported with the blend file, but it is in the blend file. So what you'll do is double click on the blend file to open up Blender, and then where you have that digital elevation map file, you want to click on that. So there's the DEM of Dobbs Ferry right there, the same one that is in Unity. So it brought in everything. So there's the DEM of Dobbs Ferry, and here it is here. That's this one here. I removed the light, but that's okay. What you want to do is go to UV editing and make sure that you've highlighted that, and then you should see the image that was created for this when we did our unwrapping before, and it's pretty closely tied to it. So what you want to do is to go to image and go save as image, and then it'll open up the folder of the assets where you had Blender in, so that's convenient. Just check that, and you can save it in that assets folder or in the materials folder that you built for that, and just save the image like that. Now when you go here into Unity, if you double click on materials, you'll see that that export is there, and there's a material already in there. So you can take the material and put it on, and then take the export and drag it on. Sometimes it takes a few seconds. I think you have to highlight it. Yeah, you got to highlight it and then drag it on. So now, boom, we have the image to be played with. So let's click save here, save the scene. So the procedure was putting the material and then putting the texture on the material. And when you look over here, you'll see that it has a mesh and then a render, and then it has this material here. And I'm not sure at this point where you can see, but when you click on, when you click on the main maps on Albedo, you see the image that is being used. And if you click on this little information, select texture, you can also select the texture there as other textures that you could put on this map. But the one that we want is that one. All right. And now, of course, we move it down to where our buildings are. And by clicking on Y, see if they line up. And they probably won't. So we may have to do some adjustments now that we're in Unity. Let's see what we got here. Yeah, Mercy, well, kind of matching up there. And Draper Lane, there they are. Okay, not too bad. Make sure using your blue arrow, which in this case is the Y-axis, where it was Z in Blender. You want to make sure that the buildings are all sitting properly, so they sort of touch the ground. But I think we're okay with that. Yeah, we are. Everything seems to have come in, including Mercy College. The windmill is there, the high school, the solar panels, Draper Lane and the solar panels. All right, so they're all in there. And then this layer here, don't even bother with. Okay, so we can, the first thing I want to do to make this playable is this layer has got to have some collision. If it doesn't have collision, then the character will fall right through it. So since I've selected the DEM of Dobbs Ferry, I go to the inspector here. It says DEM Dobbs Ferry. I go to Add Component. Let me just close this up to make it a bit easier. I go to Add Component, and the component that I want to add is Physics. And I want to make it a mesh collider. So now I have a mesh collider here, and that means that physics will apply to this and characters won't fall through. The next thing that I want to do is I want to put in my character here, and fortunately Unity has some presets that we can use with some characters. So what you need to do to get the standard assets is you go to the asset store and you type in standard assets, and you will find there are standard assets for Unity. And as it says here under show more, it has a first-person character controller, a third-person character controller, car controller, aircraft, particle, rollerball controller, camera rigs. So you can get all of those things, and you need to download that into Unity. Unfortunately, the asset store is right there. Don't have I should be over there. I need to sign in. So you click on download, and the package will come in. And then you import it, and it'll decompress. It'll take a few seconds. It's 182 megabytes, so I'll hit pause. Okay, and once you've imported it, this standard assets package shows up, and it's got so many different great things in it. And I would just say import, because if you did none, they'd none be checked, all, they're all checked, and you hit import. And then that package is going to be imported into your folder. So these do take a bit of time, and there's a lot of good packages. One, while we're waiting, that you should, I guess it won't let me do any writing until it's done importing. You should also look for the Steam VR package if you're going to work in virtual reality, that one down here, and that may help you. It will import the package, and then it'll import the small assets, so it does take a few minutes. And then it's going to compile the scripts and write the package items. And then it's going to bring in all the standard assets that it has. And once it's done importing, I guess this thing wants me to get the latest version of the Steam input thing. Let me close that. Don't need that right now. Then we should have a standards assets folder that is now under assets. And with that in place, you have things you can bring into your scene. And what I'm going to do is bring in from characters the third-person controller, and there's prefabs. And the prefab I'm going to bring in is third person, and I'm going to drop that person. Let me put the person near Draper Lane, which is my home. So I'm dropping it in near the front of my home. But to make sure, because you can hit F and you zoom in on him, to make sure that he's in the right place, one thing that helps is to go to the top view and see where he is. Another thing you can do is to click on the building itself and look at, just look at the position, 1263 in X, 43 in Y, and negative 64.9 in Z. So then you can click on your person. Where did he go? There he is, third person. Let's actually collapse all of this to make it easier to see and bring the third person up to the top. Now your person, was it 1263 that we had? The position on this, 1263 and negative 65 basically. So 1263 and negative 65. And then the Y value, because he's not showing up around here, the Y value for the building was 43. So let's bring him up to 43 and see if we can see him. Where did he go? Ah, there he is. He's in the middle of the building because that's where the building is. So now we can bring him forward, hit F, and we can drop him to the ground so that his feet are just touching the ground. There we go. So Let me bring him to this part of the building here. Zoom in again. He's stuck in the cement. And I want to rotate him so that he's facing the front of the building. You can see he's floating because the ground is uneven wherever I move him, but the gravity will take care of that. So let's rotate him about the y-axis so that he is facing the front of the building. And put his feet close to the ground. And now I want to put a camera in. And so I deleted the main camera. I'm going to add a camera instead. I'm going to go create camera. And the camera goes in pretty close to where he is, but of course if we look at the game, we don't see the camera, we don't see him. There he is. So I'm going to go to the top view and move the camera and rotate the camera so it's looking over his shoulder, and rotate it a bit down, bring it a bit closer to him. Again, rotate it a bit down, and bring it to the side. So now we have the camera there. Now, the camera has to be called, let's call it main camera. And in the tag, we need to tag it as main camera for this to work right. Now, when we pick the character, the third person, he should be tagged as player because he has scripts that came with him, the third person user control script here. And in that script, he's the third person character, but he is the player. And there's another script attached to him, which is the third person character script, the control script and the character script. And these scripts tell what different motions are programmed in to this for the third person controller, jumping and such like that. And that script references a main camera. If the main camera is not parented to the third person controller, then what happens when we hit play is our character, and when we hit the W key, is going to walk forward, turn around with the WASDF keys, come back, and we can make him jump with the space bar. So he's in our world and he's walking. The problem is that the camera won't follow him, so if we go far away, goodbye character, and we'll lose him. So what we want to do is we want to take the main camera and parent it to the third person controller by dragging it underneath the third person controller. And then when we hit play, the camera, as you can see, follows the character around and reveals, for instance, that the building is way off the ground. Now right now, if he wants to go in the building, you can see that he will pass right through it because there is no real building there as far as he's concerned. So what we have to do to eliminate that problem is we need to give collision properties to the building, just like we did the floor. You note that if I click on the floor and I remove the mesh collider, or let's not remove it, but uncheck it, when we hit play, the character is going to fall all the way through and into outer space, and goodbye, you died. So that's why the mesh collider needs to be there for that. Same thing with the buildings or any other objects that you want to have some interaction with. So the first thing I want to do is make sure that this building is on the ground by rotating it and then bringing it down so it touches the ground. And then my solar panels are off and I need to lift them up a bit. Okay, So the building now, that building needs a collider, and the collider will be, it could be a mesh collider, but it could also be a, there's a lot of different types of colliders. A box collider. A box collider works for some objects if they are boxes. If we do this, he might not go right near the wall. Capsule collider. But I think a mesh collider is going to be the best for this one now. And so we've added this mesh collider. And now when we hit play, and we go to the building, he can't get through it. He bounces off of it. Now, it does seem that he rotates awful fast on this, so there are some parameters that you can mess with when it comes to his controlling. Also, I want to see if I put the camera underneath Ethan, what happens? Does that maintain? Yeah, it's following him around. So as long as it's parented to the object. But in terms of his motion, when you click on the third-person controller, you see some public variables. Move turning speed is at 360, stationary turn speed. So you can bring these down if you want to. Now, one thing I've noticed that is very bizarre is that when you parent the main camera to the third-person controller and accept the defaults that they had a 360 here and a 160 there, and they have a leg offset of 0.2. When you accept those defaults, what's really strange is when you hit play, the character, when you hit the W key, is turning as he walks. So he's going around in circles, and you have to keep hitting the D key to make him walk straight. And that's weird. And one way you can stop that is by taking the 360 at the moving turn speed and setting it to 0. And you can thereby make him walk in a straight line, and then you have that turn. So that's one thing to do. But what I've noticed that's strange is that if I put it back up to 360 and unparent the camera so that the camera is its own thing, sitting stationary, then what happens is he walks perfectly straight. So something about the camera being attached is interacting strangely with the character when you follow him. And not sure how the best way to deal with that is. Maybe somebody else can work that out. What that is, my only way around it is to take this and turn the turning speed from 360 to 0 to get him in a straight line. And then I can start him walking around Draper Lane and walking toward Dobbs Ferry High School. And even with that set to 360 to 0, he keeps listing to the left like he wants to go in a big circle. I thought maybe that was because of the leg cycle offset. I set that to 0, and he's still kind of turning. But he's walking in a better straight line. So something about the leg offset is there. So what we want to do now is have him walk over to Dobbs Ferry High School. There's Mercy College right there on the windmill we put. And if we want to go up to Dobbs Ferry High School, which also needs to be brought back to the ground, it's up there on the hill. So let's pause because it's going to take a while to walk there. So we've gotten him up to the high school, and the high school's floating, and there's the windmills, and there's the Greenberg Hebrew Center with the solar panels on. Unfortunately, this script will not let him walk backward. So if I want to back up, I have to turn around, go toward the school, and then I have to turn around. There's the, you can see the light color from the baseball pitch, and then you can see the windmills over there. And now we're moving toward Mercy College. And you can see there's the rotunda over there with the windmill that we put on it. And it would take a while to get over there. So if we want to get to Mercy College, we got to walk down the aqueduct. Nice that the shadows are there. So we have to add some realism, obviously, to the scene. But the point is only that as we head toward Mercy College, that we do have the ability to put a character in and we can walk on the plane. When I hit stop, of course, he ends up back by Draper Lane because that's where we set the character. So our progress is lost for that. But the background, of course, doesn't show up in any great detail from this tiny perspective because of the resolution of the Google Maps. So if we want to actually see stuff, we have to build it in, just like we build these buildings. And Unity does have some prefabs for that. It has some models and materials and textures. To get the best ones, that was under characters, there's environment, and you have speed trees and terrain assets. And so if you put a surface texture, you have grass that you can drop in, for example. So if we wanted to come over here to where the baseball pitch is and make that pitch have some actual sand, we can take sand and drop it in. The problem is it's going to be on everything. Now he's in a desert. So you don't want to do that. What we'd have to do is we'd have to create a surface on this that we could then color. And you can either do that in Blender or you are able to do that here. So what you could do is you could create a 3D object and make a plane and then bring that plane, need to move it, bring the plane over and make sure that the height is in Y is set properly, because when you do that it's way underground. So lift it up and zoom in and lift it up. So you've got to get it above ground, and then you have to move it onto the area where the pitch is. And you can see that now it's right there, and then you can size it and sort of create your sand area.